Community Forum. My name is Byron Campbell, your host, and co-host Chris Dialli. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron, and a very good evening to our viewers and listeners. We welcome you back to another Community Forum. We think we're going to have an exciting program tonight because we're talking climate change. And I
100%.
that has been in the news and all the heat and what we see in records breaking in a Grenada context.
Very uncomfortable period
Yes.
the past week, Chris. But of course, tonight is a blue moon. It's you saw it?
What is the difference between a blue moon and a white moon?
Tonight, the moon is at its closest, as it circles the Earth, it's at its closest point to the Earth. It is going to happen again in 2037, 15 years. So later look at it. It's bigger than normal. But very bright, very pretty this evening. But so yeah, Chris, I agree. The heat wave of special guests will be a climate change expert will be here later on to speak, to have a conversation with us. Grenlink outages, and on top of that, we understand that the chairman resigned.
Yeah, well, Mr. Buffett has been a long-standing employee of Grenlink until he retired. And I suppose putting him as chairman would have been a good thing to do to transition. And knowing the gentleman, he's a qualified accountant, and I worked with him for a few years, so I know him. So he's a very principled guy. So I see all the hype in the media.
What does social media say?
What is that there were differences between him and the board and some members on the board and so forth and so on, and the politics with the board, and he believed that the time was for him to leave. And you have to respect that. I don't think anything is linked to the outage. Normally the outage, you know, it was severe, it was island-wide. It was down for about 3 or 4 hours thereabout. But it probably speaks to maintenance or engine issues that they may be
But the fact that in this heat wave environment that we're using more AC, more fans, everything's working harder, that could have, they didn't give a reason though.
Yeah, they haven't. And that will increase the increased uses of ACs and so on. It obviously increase the load on the system. But Grenlink's supposed to be able to take that. I mean, the engines are designed to take a maximum and a minimum, and you give you a threshold to work with. So it had to be something with an engine that they didn't expect, because to be down for so long and to start up another engine probably out of sync, out of the planned time.
Yeah. But back to the politics on the board. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, chairman resigned. You ever resigned as a chairman, Chris?
Oh yeah, I resigned from quite a few boards as chairman, and it is a lot to do with, you know, a lot of boards in our small country have political appointees. Yeah. And some of these political appointees come with specific things they want to see achieved for the party or whatever the politics is. And if you're a chairman that requires you to act in a certain way regarding to governance and all of that, you would not sync with that kind of thing.
And you leave.
And you leave. Yeah. And you wouldn't compromise yourself, your ethics, or your professionalism.
Same happened to me. I remember in my case, it happened with Grenada Bank of Commerce. It didn't sync with the politics, so I submitted my resignation. It's what happens. That's the proper thing to do. Chris, supplementary budget, $144 million. It was not supported by the opposition. The opposition claimed that insufficient supporting documentation information was provided, so they could not go along with it. But out of that, 133.5 million was capital, which is the bulk of it. But what's interesting is some $7.5 million is to be allocated to the 50th anniversary celebration. 2 million of that is going to the commemorative note.
Money note.
What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, generally, a supplementary budget is a normal thing that governments will put forward. It will come for various reasons. They want to take loans to do certain things. The significant majority of this for capital. The opposition complaining about not enough detail, that has been a complaint forever in the parliament when they come with supplementary budgets. They never give
So
you
you've
detail.
heard that before?
Yeah. That is nothing new. That is something that always happens.
Remind us though, you've been in the Senate for what, 20 years, Chris?
No. Almost 15 years.
15 years,
Just
okay.
15.
It sounds like 20.
Yeah. So that is nothing new in terms of what they have said. And normally on the other side of the Senate, you would expect a little more details, because I want people to have a conversation to justify what it is they're coming to. They're putting more more authority for them to spend more. They're coming for more authority to spend more. And you see, it comes against the context of a budget. A budget was presented. So when you come with a supplementary, it is to kind of signal things that you didn't expect or you didn't plan for properly. So some of the expenditure, like I think that they included something with minimum wage. You knew you were having a minimum wage. You knew it was, I suppose they could argue, you didn't know what extent you will go to, so you have to come for extra to pay. When
so it's not necessarily a lack of planning, it's what happens during the year.
It can, and it could be a lack of planning.
And it's additional to the budget presented in the last budget.
And
so
we have laws that says you must come
Yeah.
back to Parliament for approval for
this,
these things that in order to keep, get the authority to do the spend. So that is where it is. So I mean, I didn't listen to the entire debate, but there would be challenges to certain things.
And most of the money has to be raised through a loan. Because the recurrent expenditure is defined. It's a loan. You're going to raise this money in a bank or some other institution.
Well, not all may be loan. Some may be true loans. And some may be through grant funding or whatever case they may be, or they go for.
So this is likely to have an impact on our debt to GDP ratio.
Right.
So these are the other implications.
When you're in opposition, you just complain at the debt to GDP ratio and whether you could afford to pay the loan. And when you're becoming government,
you do this.
You're taking the loan and you're worried about, so.
Chris, related to that, for me, it's a big deal. I mean, the dialogue on free education, but I'm focusing more on TAMCC and new law, and I want to focus on new law. This is a very good policy. I want to support it strongly. New law has been doing how do I describe their work?
Well, no, super work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And a challenge for a lot, because I know a lot of the past students, even some current ones, a challenge they've had was meeting because a lot of their students come from underprivileged homes, poor families, and that's been a challenge. I mean, I've known persons, myself and others have been supporting individual students at New Law. So tuition being paid for New Law, because this is the technical skills, I strongly support. It's a big deal. TAMCC also, but new law.
Without a doubt. I mean, where we could render assistance in underprivileged situations, and new law is a lot about skills training in various areas and much needed areas. And you will have that. I mean, the critique I will have, you add on 2.5 million, I think the minister said it's going to cost them to bring on the tuition, to pay tuition for these children. Over the years, the government, past government and NDC government when they were in power before, never supported TAMCC in the way it needed to be supported. This is the only tertiary education, local education institution. And we always, I sat on TAMCC board for a number of years. I was part of the finance committee.
Okay.
So I know intricately that governments in the past never gave TAMCC the right amount of money for them to function.
So this is a big deal now, Chris.
It has to be, and TAMCC probably would require, quite a bit of money a month because most of it goes into paying salaries.
Salaries, yeah.
And governments in the past have never allowed TAMCC to increase tuition costs because of what they figure the effect is. So they had to give subvention every month to TAMCC.
Kudos.
We don't understand this thing.
Kudos to this. Kudos to this. Good policy. Absolutely.
Let's hope they can keep it.
Sports. Well, in the news all week, of course, the World Championship. Grenada, big deal. Lyndon Victor medaling. Gold. He said it feels like gold, Chris. I mean, I told you this. It's a bronze, of course, but what's important is how he feels. This is a big deal for Grenada. But the team, Kiwani James and what's our other athlete?
The javelin.
Javelin, yeah. So it's a big deal. I mean, congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we had 3 world-class athletes at the World Games.
Yeah.
World-class.
Peters, yeah.
Yeah. Kirani, of course, made the final again. Yes, he didn't medal, he didn't place, but just to make the finals is a big thing.
It's a big thing, yeah.
And the young man in the decathlon, Peters, I mean, he has been on the door knocking for quite a number of years, and finally he has gotten through. So that's a big thing, and I can understand the bronze feel like a gold.
Yeah, Lyndon Victor. Yeah, Lyndon Victor is the bronze.
He has put us on the map.
And decathlon, This is one of the most difficult and
It's
complex.
grueling.
It's grueling because
Yeah.
because
10
it
different
comes
events.
10 different events.
Yeah,
It's
so-
not like so you understand
Have
what
to
the
be super
training
fit.
and the discipline is
Yeah,
like.
yeah. So
Awesome.
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 And I mean,
That's a big deal. I have to pound
Anderson
it.
Peters in the javelin, yes,
Yeah.
he didn't medal this time, but again, we have guys making finals.
Yeah.
And making us proud.
Yeah.
We are little might in our country. you know,
And keep
so-
in mind that Kawani would have had a lot of challenges because he lost his coach earlier this year. So this would have been extremely disruptive, and he's had some health challenges also. So these are heroes for us anyway. Chris, Kawani Bay settlement. I heard the Minister of Legal Affairs talking about it because this we know has been in dispute. Legal in the legal environment.
Yes. It went to the International Court.
International Court. The minister didn't give much
Tribunal.
detail, but what I heard is that there's a settlement, and in that settlement, Grenada would retain ownership of the property. What are the implications for that? I mean, would it be sold? Would it be leased? Would it be? I don't see us operating it ourselves.
You know, that is an interesting
Yeah.
comment from the minister to say
Yeah.
it's settled by Grenada taking ownership.
Yeah.
It would mean that the original owners were paid. They
Yeah.
didn't pursue the case at the International Tribunal Court where the gentleman took Grenada on this project. So they would have settled, and government would have paid some money for it. The issue is where the money have come from to pay. And the second thing is, of course, the fact that they would have gone to pay for the Kiwana Bay project, which is in a state of unfinished and needs to, from an engineering and other point, needs significant work. They must have another client they plan to lease it to or something, because to pay it and take ownership is one. Yes, you could then handle title over and what under certain terms and conditions. So that's a good thing, because Kiwana Bay would have had not 100%, but you could argue it would have been about 70%
Completed, yes.
And there was a lot of other works to be done. And if you could get another signature hotel of a certain standard, 5-star and so on, it's good for the country, it's more rooms and so on. So it's good from that point of view, but you know, people will question, where did the government get the money to settle the matter, or how was the settlement done? So I suspect that will come up
later on. Later on, we hear that. Chris, minimum wage report. I heard the minister again, said minister talking about what's coming forward. So, for example, what I recall is that, for example, agricultural workers will move from $6.25 an hour to $12. It's about, if you work 5 hours, that's $60 a day. Many farm owners are already paying this anyway. Are we going to expect, well, across the board in other sectors, you know, when I hear minimum wage, I think about productivity also, because it goes hand in hand. If you're going to find more money, you need to be making more money.
I mean, in percentage terms, moving from $6.25 to $12 is almost 100% increase.
Yeah.
Now, if they apply that across the entire spectrum,
Yeah.
in different worker categories, whether it's construction workers, laborers, people who work in the industry with
a lot of services people,
and so on, it will be a significant thing in terms of increase. If you're not there already. In agriculture, we're there. The problem we have in agriculture, you can't find people to work even at $12 an hour. So there's another issue. This wouldn't address that issue.
No.
I'm moving because we're already paying it. So the issue is affordability in the different sectors and how it's going to impact the sectors. Because when you move, I mean, we could always argue that $6.25 has been in the books for a number of years and needed to change and go up.
True.
Inflation has probably tripled in that time and so on. So you needed to make some adjustments.
Security officers also, workers,
Right. So there's no argument there. I think the argument is the affordability at the rate they have done it, because 100% move in agriculture. I don't know what is the others, but you have to understand how it's going to affect the industries that it's going to be applied to. Security is a good example, because people in the security industry, if they're not there already and they have to sustain another a significant increase, they will come to me and tell me they have to change their rates and pay more, and I'm going to tell them, boy, we need you again, and I'll just fence my place. I'm paying more. So you have to balance it.
Chris, we have to go. We have to go to our special guest this evening, of course. So we are going to take viewers. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to deal with the issue of climate change. Please stay with us with our local expert, regional expert. See you in a moment.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you need to get a renal, thyroid, or liver function test.
Interested in STI screening for HIV, syphilis, herpes, chlamydia, or gonorrhea?
All of these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
Allied Laboratories welcomes you. You can find us here on Gladstone Road in Grenville, in the building next to Calico, on the second floor, adjacent to Dr. Isaac's office. Or you can find us here on Granance Main Road, adjacent to South Winds, opposite the entrance of XL Plaza. Contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488 or 419-1588 or send us an email at alliedlabgrenville@gmail.com.
You can contact our Granance branch at 403-3488 or 404-3488 or send us an email at alliedlabstgeorge@gmail.com.
Fit for life and Allied Laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here with a regional expert on climate change. He is Steve Maximay. Steve is international recognized expert on climate change, comprehensive climate change agriculture, climate justice, and leveraging intellectual property. He's worked in every CARICOM country. He has championed the triple carriageway of creativity, science, and intellectual property, as a part to regional development. Steve has been a contributor to the Caribbean Workers Forum since its inception. Steve, I know you're based in Grenada presently. We are very privileged, I think, Grenada, the region, to have someone of your caliber. And we're extremely pleased to have you here this evening with us to talk about climate change and its impact and what we can do as individuals about it. This week, Steve, past 6-7 days has been unbearable, uncomfortably hot, you know. And this is only the start of things to come. I understand. Are we taking it seriously? I mean, straight off. Are we doing sufficient? Let me finish first, Steve. Are we taking it seriously from individually and as policy makers, you know? When you look at our policy in terms of a Department of the Environment, and because it has the potential to impact so much on lives. Are we?
In a nutshell?
Yeah.
Yes. In terms of this particular country, Grenada,
Yeah.
as a region, yes. As Grenada, yes. Are we doing enough? Maybe not enough. But we are doing
On the
a lot.
definitive
We are doing a
answer,
lot. We are
I
doing a lot.
don't feel it, Steve.
No, but you don't feel it because
Yeah.
maybe the heat wave hasn't affected you as it has affected the average man in the street. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, in your air conditioned
I
vehicle,
don't
maybe
hear about the Ministry of the Environment. I don't hear the minister articulating the issues, advising the nation. What are we doing? What are they doing? Because this is getting worse.
it is getting worse. But to be fair, if you look at what the minister has been doing, and I don't work in the ministry, obviously I'm not connected to the government in any particular way, but when you look at the statements made after COP27, let's say, the type of work going on in enhanced direct access to GCF funds and so on, these are related to climate change, right? So although you may not have heard a definitive statement, you know, don't go outside in the hot sun, you know, or something as, you know, as mundane as that, behind the scenes and at the levels that really matter financially, policy-wise, and in terms of our negotiation status. So you have the work of Spencer Thomas and
Simon, no.
right? And
Simon Steve.
my old colleague, yes, Fred. Simon is now the Secretary General. I mean, this is as big a cheese as you can get,
Yes.
in climate change circles. And then you have my colleague from Cocoa Board. I keep forgetting his name now, but it will come to me.
Leon Charles.
Leon
Yes,
Charles,
yes.
So that, as I said, I don't think the rubric should be what a minister says. With all due respect to ministers.
No, yeah.
I don't think, a ministerial statement is just that, a ministerial statement.
I'm looking
But in
at
terms
the
of what's
policy and
happening,
the action.
policy and the action.
Action.
I think there's a significant amount going on. And as someone who has tentacles into each CARICOM country, I can tell you that we are not worse off, than a lot of our contemporaries, including my original home country,
Steve,
Trinidad and Tobago.
Let me say this. Global warming clearly is a consequence of our lifestyle. That's what's generated the broad sense. But here's the thing. I saw something here. The UN Secretary General referred to a recent UN report on climate change as a litany of broken promises, a file of shame in relation to the commitments of nation states, He said the jury has reached a verdict and is damning. We are on a fast track to climate disaster. Someone wrote saying, my generation has failed miserably. We have behaved irresponsibly, not by chance, but by wanton neglect and disregard for the grievous harm and irreparable damage we have caused to our planet, and a younger generation who deserves a better and more hopeful fate. What is your assessment of the human fate? I mean,
I am extremely optimistic. I mean, this is going to
You're optimistic?
This is going to be very strange coming from an old head like mine. No, but let me just tell you.
Yeah.
When I look at what has been done, what is still to be done, but we have a generation of youngsters coming out there. People that I would have thought, let's say 10 years ago. These are the champions now. The old guard with people like me, with all due respect. People
well,
like
you're leading the world.
We are not at the vanguard. I mean, we might be at the vanguard intellectually and making the most noise and having the most recognition. But there's a generation behind us that is committed, well educated, and they understand that it is their future we're talking about. 2050 means, well, all due respect, 2050 means nothing to me. I'm not even sure if I can be around 2050, right? But the youngsters there, they understand what 2050 means. They understand what 2030 means. They understand that all of this talk about net zero is not zero. Net zero is not zero. So that there are going to be people producing oil, like Guyana, let's say, who are still going to be around to have their hands up when it comes to who is going to be producing the 40% of fossil fuels that will balance off the emissions for us to get to net zero. Meaning, we send off as many emissions as we sequester somewhere, right? So that Norway and Saudi Arabia, all these countries are still going to be producing oil. So don't let this net zero talk fool you. But I'm telling you that there's a generation immediately behind us that have understood it. They are at the forefront, and they are more. I'm trying to be very stating what I'm going to say next. They are not the Greta Thunbergs of this world. They are not the ones who get flown to meetings and they are the ones in the trenches. They are the ones ensuring that we have the moral authority to demand from the first world, demand from the polluters, that here we have the moral authority to tell you that you have to pay up, that you have to redress some of these wrongs. And that is where the whole climate justice argument comes in, right? And if I can just take a minute out.
Please,
Because
you're a guest.
I know this. Just because I'm a guest doesn't mean I have full reading. Because
you do.
I'm the type of guest. I'm a trainer. I'm the type of guest. I'm the type of guest that will tell you, you're not Byron. Let me and Chris have a conversation. No, but seriously, if I can just, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, just encapsulate what this climate justice thing is. It's been bandied about all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're walking down the street one day. Someone walks up to you and slashes you with a razor or something. I mean, in any part of the world, that is a crime, right? So you can take that person to court anywhere in the world on any kind of political regime and get awarded a settlement, right? So this person slash you, clear case of injustice, you take them to court, you're awarded a settlement, 50,000 US, let's say. Only to find out that the person who slashed you is a surgeon, and they're going to take that same $50,000 to patch you up. So what we are doing is we are paying the people who caused the problem to help solve it for us on our behalf. So this whole climate justice thing has implications for where the redress occurs. Why should I be paying the polluter for the solutions? And that's where we drift into the whole realm of intellectual property and how much of the solutions are generated within the SIDS, within the third world. And that is at the core of this climate justice thing. So that when you see these big pronouncements, people are awarded, some country gives $50 million to degrade us as a poor country. No, that's ours. We earned it. And now you're going to give it to us with one hand and then ask us to buy goods and services.
I'm going to pass on.
Same thing. I know you pass on.
I'm going to pass on my colleague. But just one question, I have before on the same matter. What is the purpose of climate justice when the crimes continues unabated? What's the point?
What do you mean, what's the point?
No, but the crime continues.
That is.
So
are you familiar with the broken window theory? Just the fact that one crime has gone unpunished,
same
or
crime.
It's taken so long to be punished, doesn't mean that you throw your arms up in the air and say, well, go ahead, kill me. No, come on, Barry.
But it continues. I mean, the focus must be on the change. If we're going to take the money, and it just continues.
And I don't like the term "take the money." Take the money implies that it's something unlawful.
It's ours.
We are going. It is ours. It is ours. We are going to claim the money as opposed to take. Sorry about that.
I hear Steve, and climate justice. I mean, there's a lot more involved, and I agree with him. When you look at what is happening now, the young people and what they're doing, they're demanding.
Oh yes.
Because a big part of this is burning of coal, and we have the Chinas and the U.S.
Australia
that continues to burn coal in significant quantities.
Yeah.
And if we could get them to just stop that, that would be a big change. And these young people and them in the climate justice movement are all about is a movement. They're not accepting these things.
As they used to. And thing of this world. I mean, I say that a lot of Grenadians are at the forefront.
And I just want to take it in a different angle. I mean, in Grenada, from where I sit, two of the major pillars of our economy is agriculture, being able to feed ourselves on food security, and tourism. And what is happening to our beaches with temperature rise, the bleaching of the reefs, and so on. GCF, we have NAWASA getting a significant amount from GCF, $125 million grant to deal with water sustainability, which is an important part of the climate change as well. So the key is, and I know Spencer Thomas, Dr. Thomas, and Leon, and these guys have been at the forefront. Simon is now there. So the key is, how can we, understanding that two of our main pillars, and we're going to come to climate smart agriculture just now. How can we as a country benefit on those two pillars alone? Protection of our beaches. What do we do with our reefs to ensure? We just put on a new what park?
Sculpture park. Some new sculptures,
Right. How do we, ensure that the country could benefit and tourism could be sustainable? Understanding what the polluters are doing and understanding that we need to accelerate funding to our countries.
I take your point. Accelerating funding always helps, but accelerating funding in the absence of clear guiding policy, which is something that I know Barry was alluding to earlier. So, of course, we have even with two industries that have the potential to be climate change accelerators. We talk about tourism. All these people flying left, right, and center. We have the attributive science now. We can tell you how many grams of how many tons of carbon dioxide you were responsible for your last JetBlue trip, right? No. I'm being very serious, right? So you're involved in an industry now which has to go green now. Fortunately, or otherwise, I used to be a Green Globe consultant, and Green Globe was an environmental standard where the tourists spoke about food miles. In other words, why should a tourist be eating beef grown in the US? The beef has traveled the same distance as the tourist, right? So the food has actually accumulated miles, right? So that when the climate change issue first burst on the scene, so sorry to get into the historical aspect, I was in Lisbon at a European Development Days meeting. This is 20 years ago. And someone stuck a microphone in my face and said, oh, as somebody from the third world, what are somebody, we're going to throw the arms up in the air? I said, no, there are a number of openings now, because out of every crisis, there are opportunities. And here we have now hotels, and this is 20 years ago, saying that, we're going to have more local fare. Not because they're so interested in the local production, because they recognize that they're more savvy guests are asking questions. Why should I be eating beef that travel the same distance I travel? So as I said, in the midst of all of that, there are always these little, these little nuggets that we can pull out. But to get back to your question, yes, I think we need more funding, but that funding must not be used to send the money back to the source.
No, because
and that has been my major
and that is a problem, because Petit Martin there, they had to do a lot of reinforcement because of sea level rise.
Yeah.
We've seen it on the carnage. The whole carnage needs to be redone. Sea level rise and the aggressiveness of the water and so on. So we are experiencing it. Yes, we're on the front line. So the issue here for me, and I know about accelerating, trying to get the funds quicker, but we need to, I agree, policy needs to say these are the 5 projects we're doing in the next 5 years. Protection of the reefs, protection of sea level rise. I don't get into our agricultural waterways. What are we doing from that perspective, from a policy perspective, in a Grenada's context, to ensure that 2 generations down, we are seeing that our people are going to be protected in particular areas.
So that you don't destroy mangrove.
That's right.
The viral passages, etc. Right? Because it's the same tourism product that you're trying to give the visitor a first-hand experience. I remember many years ago.
The key is the balance.
Yeah.
Do we get a balance?
Do we get a balance? And I am not sure, to be quite honest. As I say, I'm not as au fait with the current policy negotiations. But if I look at historically, it seems that we have always been headed in the right direction with a few hiccups here and there. In the sense that I'm always aware of the fact that when a developer, whatever ilk, comes and says, I have 500 million to invest. I mean, it takes more than just political savvy to turn that away and say, no, I'm not going to destroy this piece of mangrove here because, you take the 500 million, right? And then you try to address it within the context of, okay, so we probably do some sea defenses, outside PT and that side, but,
Yeah.
I mean, that goes the way of war rock, So, yes, it is a balancing act, right? Before I had personal interactions with politicians at cabinet level within the Caribbean, I always thought that, as a good backseat driver, I knew everything that they were facing. But once you sit down in that front seat and you realize that to keep this vehicle moving, there are compromises that have to be made, and it is not always easily reflected in the visible policy. I'm making very clear in the visible policy, because I'm sure you're all aware that the policy operates at 2 levels. There's the official policy, and then there's the actual policy.
Steve, you know what's my fear in this? Here we have a OECS CARICOM region. All of us will be feeling the effects in different ways. And I always go back to my experience with the tourism head tax with the cruise ships.
Oh, jeez, and how they undermine one another.
That's right.
And the taxi drivers in Dominica were complaining.
That's right.
Let's undercut them. And certain countries were paying American Airlines to come here.
Yeah. Only for specific political gain by country. And they know how to do us that well. Divide us.
Divide and conquer. Yeah.
With climate change, however, it isn't going to be so forgiving as a head tax.
It's not going to be.
And probably we could move into climate smart agriculture. My boys are agriculturists. How is that? Because climate smart agriculture goes beyond just how we deal with climate change. It affects the type of grain, the type of irrigation, the different styles of farming.
So let's ask the expert, what are the fundamentals of climate smart agriculture, and are we making meaningful progress?
Well, you're asking the right person.
Of course.
Okay, this is the one thing that I know a little bit about. Right? So that we, and I am using that we in the royal sense, but it's really, some of the stuff that my company has been doing. There's a comprehensive climate smart agriculture that's out there that is now available as an app that has been endorsed by CARDI and UV, etc., etc. And this is one that looks at a comprehensive approach to climate smart agriculture. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are 5 pillars on which this comprehensive agriculture is based. Resource conservation, and I'll explain each in turn. In less than 5
sure.
minutes, right?
Yeah,
Resource
fine, go ahead.
conservation,
Yeah, it's important.
energy use, safety. I'm sure you've never heard safety mentioned in the same sentence with climate smart agriculture.
Agriculture,
ever, right? And I can put my head on a block and tell you that, and tell your viewers, I can stare your viewers in the face and say that. The only time you have heard that is from me, right? So then there's biodiversity support, which when people talk about climate smart agriculture, you tend not to hear about that. And then there's greenhouse gas reduction. So those are the 5 pillars. And it's based on those 5 pillars that there's something called CSAC. It's a climate smart agriculture compliant tool that was developed in the third world, that's registered in the third world, is trademarked in the third world, and is a way for SIDS to really come to grips with the climate justice issues, the intellectual property issues, to get rid of the bioprospecting. I mean, there are a whole range of things that we, if we talk about climate smart agriculture, you have to talk about. But I'm just going to base the first part of that explanation on these 5 pillars. Yeah. And based on these 5 pillars, there's a tool now that is an auditing tool, a training tool, a certification tool. So whilst people are still running around, and I'm no disrespect to go talking about organic production, organic is a brand. Organic has to be certified. You can't just get up one morning and you say, this thing is organic because it was pesticide, just grew on pesticide free. You don't know what the guy up the road was doing. You don't know how much cadmium there is in your soil. This is something that has to be we now have more localized standards that would say, look, we are certifying that this product has been grown, produced, processed in a climate smart agriculture compliant way because it has a CSAC rating of a particular number,
Steve, I hear you. I think that is wonderful. But the biggest one of the biggest problems we face in agriculture, is age and demographic. How do I get a young person in their 20s to buy into that level of scientific approach and structured approach to agriculture?
Show them the BMW I'm driving. Right. I say this without any
apologies at all?
No apologies at all, because for many years, we people in the agriculture have been our worst enemy. How could I convince my son, my young cousin, to come into a field where everybody catching the tail? Yeah. Have you ever heard a farmer say publicly, I'm doing well, I educated my children abroad?
And a lot of them have done that.
They never do it. Yeah. I am on record as saying that I'm only a few people this time. I said, I made the right choice to get into agriculture, right? I'm very successful at it. I'm doing very well. And I'm encouraging people to come into it. To the extent that I wrote a book in 1991 in terms of careers in agriculture, because people are unaware of the range of careers in agriculture, right? So I'm not worried about the young people. There's a program called Y Farm, which is We Help Youths Farm, out of Trinidad by a youngster named Alpha Senon, right? And big up to Alpha. I'm sure he's going to see this at some point. Yeah. And he has created a comic book character called Agriman. And Byron, you may recall in another dispensation that I would have done training, and so in terms of how you get young people involved in a sector. And there's something called a template. And there's TAMPLATE, and those are all the letters for the acronyms that make up what you need to get youth involved in agriculture. One of the first T's is training, but there's also employment in there, and there's mentorship, and then there's promotion. Just as a last stab at that, we do not have to encourage young people, and I'm going to use an example that I'm very familiar in St. Vincent to plant marijuana.
Repeat that?
We don't have to encourage young people in St. Vincent to plant marijuana. No, you don't. Because the benefits are there. The benefits are there. We don't have to promote it. We don't have to promote it because they know if they have a successful crop and they get into this lifestyle, even though it's legal now and all that, but they get into this lifestyle, they're going to be blinging more than all these guys who went to secondary school. You're not
talking about Grenada, are you?
No. Not yet.
We are not there yet, Chris.
I'm not talking about Grenada.
Chris, we're not there yet.
I won't be so drunk to say that. But I'm talking about St. because now that it's legal. You see, I was involved in terms of looking at the planning of the impact on forestry, because you had forestry officers officers who could go to certain parts of St.
forget
Vincent
agri-
because
forget
people.
marijuana. I mean, if you take
Any
American
perspective-
American farmers.
You're driving
It's
an
a
air
crop.
condition. You're driving an air
It's a
condition.
crop.
You're driving an air conditioned truck. You're not going about the place
That's right.
every 2 minutes saying, "Oh God, things hard in the boy."
No,
Yeah.
American
You
farmers
can't
are
get
some of the
anybody
richest,
into a sector. You
richest
can't
people
get
in-
anybody into. And you know what's
And
the
well
sad part?
protected
You know
too.
what's the sad part? There are very successful people in agriculture in the region. In Grenada, in Guyana, in Trinidad, in St. Vincent. Very, very, very successful. I don't know if it's because of, looking to avoid taxation when countries where crime rates are high, you don't want to go about this place saying,
That is
hey, no,
one
I
sector
mean,
that don't pay no taxing and have all sorts of
no,
concessions.
notice I'm not making it reference specifically to Grenada.
But-
I'm just
no,
saying
but I
that
know.
across the board, if
Yes.
young people are interested in agriculture, there are lots of young people involved in agriculture. I mean, I have mentored and I'm looking at a lot of the progression of some of the people involved in production, which is the end that most people say, oh, I don't want to get my hands in it. That's rubbish. Those guys are long past that. These guys are talking about, digital and e-agriculture and smart contracts and displaced ledger technologies.
But
I'm not worried. That is why I'm so confident.
Yeah.
Because I have a front row seat to the generation
you
behind us.
know
So
what's
I'm not worried.
happening.
I'm not as worried about Byron.
One of the
and
things-
Byron's generation.
One of the things,
as
one
the
of the things
other
Steve
generation.
did, as an expert in the field, is that one of the government program, the SIRE program, actually working with 4-H's, he developed a manual. How do you call it, Steve? A hands-on manual, interactive manual for young people, students
And
to
they see
apply.
themselves and they see themselves.
Particularly the
as
4-H's,
they
and
doing
I
it.
thought that was excellent in terms of the animation and the other
Yeah.
things used. But Steve, related to climate smart agriculture, of course, we are still in a poor situation as far as food security is concerned.
Nutrition security.
Nutrition security is concerned.
I don't buy the
No,
food
I agree.
security rubbish.
Nutrition security. I'm going fully with you there, because still we're importing to 75, 80. It varies from island to island, but we are around 75%. That's a lot of food being imported. Where's the impact going to happen? What's the strategy to change this?
Well, as somebody who was old enough to remember the RTP, which was the Regional Transformation Program, we know right smack in the middle of 25 by 2025, where the region as a whole, CARICOM as a whole, has agreed that, look, we are going to reduce our food import bill regionally, be careful of that, regionally by 25% by 2025. I mean, I was in Guyana last week, and the type of silos that are being built on the Berbice River for the kind of corn production and so that's going to come out of Guyana and come out of Belize. I mean, this is an old Eric Williams idea. Let's not
Exactly.
let's not get carried
Yeah,
away, right?
yeah.
So it's of course an old idea. It's not new wine in old skins, hopefully,
Yeah.
right? But I'm saying that when I look at the people who are in charge of it now, they're a brighter generation than I was, thank God.
Yeah.
And I really feel that we have a fighting chance. I mean, I have to take President Ofanali at his word that he is going to be the new Caribbean godfather in the same realm as Eric Williams was the Caribbean
But as
godfather.
you're speaking, the Guyanese are complaining, well, not complaining, making a point that there isn't workers. The workers to do it
to
is
get
not
to that.
available. Guyana is saying this. They're saying this in the construction sector and agricultural sector also.
Of course.
So
because
how's
everybody,
so
everybody in Guyana who has a license driving a truck right now.
Exactly.
Because
Right.
the construction booming, I mean, the most dangerous place to be in Guyana, especially after hours, is on a highway. Because you have these 15-ton trucks.
There's one
pelted
project they had to
up and
import
down.
60 truck drivers.
No.
I was reading the other day.
Exactly, because I mean, just because you have a light T license doesn't mean you're going to trust you. But I take your point
So
about
the
the workers.
So are we thinking?
We are
labor issue.
always
Labor issues,
talking
yeah.
about importing labor. Always
Yeah.
talking about importing labor.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bring up the Haitian situations and things because it has too much local context. But I can tell you, as someone who was living in Trinidad when the Haitian immigration issue came up, for fellow CARICOM cousins, I find we have a way of, discriminating that is really, really, really unpalatable.
Yeah.
Right? So look at Bahamas, what happens with Haitians. So there are workers available, but will the countries be prepared, even with a widened CSME, Remember, there's much talk now
Yeah.
about, about
Yeah.
not necessarily lowering the standards, but broadening the standards
I have
in terms of the
been speaking
categories
about
of workers that can come in.
You
right?
tell me I'm in the Senate for 15 years. I've been speaking for that
Yeah.
for almost 15 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Structured approach
Yeah.
to immigration.
immigration.
Yes,
Yeah.
structured approach, because there's Haitians, of course, then there's Cubans.
Yes.
The work ethic.
Then there's the Venezuelan
That's right.
fed from the south coming up,
Yeah.
right? Trinidad. all
Yes,
the
you
way
have
up.
to manage it. Yes,
Haitians coming across now wave.
but the other aspect of that is the economic activity that additional people create. Remember, that's what tourism does to us.
Right?
Tourism just grows the population by 3,000 or 5,000 people
course.
in a month.
Yeah.
Right.
course.
Similarly, services like education services. When our students
And
are
health
here,
services now, especially.
right,
Health services
you just
as
grow
well.
the population, and you see what happens when the population grows. You must consume, you must access services, all of that.
Yeah.
So why not in agriculture?
I
don't
that,
understand this.
That would be one area of expertise where I wouldn't be able to use, my many years of experience to answer that. All I can tell you
Dominica
is that
does it successfully, with Haitians because of the language.
Yes.
because of the Creole.
The Creole. And
Interesting.
Dominica does it
But
successfully.
let's be quite clear. It's not only because of the language.
No.
It's because of a history of integration, a history of understanding how you deal with not just external populations, but even indigenous. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the Kainago territory and the relationships the Dominicans have with the Kainago people and so.
So
So I'm sorry to have sort of.
No, that's
veered
okay, that's okay.
off
So-
course
so-
into
No. Well, my
Yeah.
my thing
Wider.
on the climate smart thing and
Yeah.
climate smart agriculture in particular,
Yeah.
because
is the youngsters.
no, not so much the youngsters. I know the youngsters are going to take it, and I have a son that is into it. My son is in his early 30s, and he into that.
Aquaponics and the
And,
whole,
right,
the
and
whole work.
Yeah.
he does mushrooms and
Yeah.
and he into
Yeah.
the production and
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's all scientific for them.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's not about, as our ECCB chairman had said many years ago, the head of the bank, you're coming with a cutlass and a
Dwight?
fork. Yes, Dwight.
Dwight said that.
And you're driving in $150,000 to $200,000 vehicle with all the science, and then you're stepping out with a water boots and a cutlass and a fork. I mean, we have to move from that kind of transition. So I agree with you. I support our young people will take it, but we have to guide them.
Yep.
And that is the thing. But the challenge I see, Steve, even with climate smart agriculture, is agriculture traditionally challenges marginal people. That is the tradition and the history. And we have to, with the changes with climate, heat and water and all of the things that come with the challenges, how do we raise and get people who traditionally have been in agriculture in the old ways to understand that they now have to transition? Pest and disease is not. We've seen a lot more of it. We see in the Sahara dust.
Because of climate change as well.
And the thing is, how do we get our farmers or people who have to provide food for us and others that, things have to be done quite differently. Just monitoring the data, sorry. Just monitoring the data is so critical.
I hear you.
And that mind transition is another thing that worries me.
I don't know. My optimism is just based on something that I may have researched in a book or so. I'm working with people on the ground here, NIFO, not at the local organizations. I'm seeing what is happening at colleges like Wesley College. I mean, Wesley College is not a school you normally associate with agriculture, but there's a dynamic young teacher in there. We've just secured some funds. We're going to be doing fantastic things down there. So as I said, the optimism is born out of a hands-on feel for what's going on.
Because of where you're located
and
also.
because of where you're located too,
see,
right? I'm right smack in
but-
the thing, right? So my perspective is slightly different to yours. But I take your point that there has to be a just transition. There's another climate justice term that comes up. Just transition has to do with how do you assist people to make changes that were not brought about by their own inefficiencies. They didn't cause this problem, but now you're asking them to do something different.
Yeah.
How do you transition a worker, let's forget agriculture for the time being, a worker in non-renewable energy to now transition into renewables? For that to be a just transition, where just is an adjective and not an adverb, that just transition, how do you then provide them with the resources, the training, the skills, the support, etc. That is what you're asking me, right?
Yeah.
How do you do it? And luckily, again, I'm right smack in the middle of that. That same Caribbean Workers Forum that we're talking about, we're going to be...
Steve, there seems to be some, I won't say confusion, but some debate over what CSA, climate smart agriculture, really means, and and whether it actually is benefiting farmers and food systems in the face of climate change. Some argue that it's a set of technical fixes and not taking into consideration political issues surrounding how food systems are structured, the power dynamics that exist with current food systems, and consideration for human rights, sustainability, and of course equality. What's your take on this?
My take on that is that this is not a comprehensive climate smart agriculture that they're talking about. I made it a point when I was first asked to say that what I'm involved in is comprehensive climate smart agriculture, where climate smart agriculture is an approach, is a set of activities. And the analogy I use most times for older people is safe driving or defensive driving. Just because you bought a new set of brakes doesn't make you a defensive driver, you know? Because you're still driving like an idiot. You still have your high beam on at night, which is my major bugbear. Right?
All of us.
All of us, right? So bear with me. So just because somebody might say, you know, doing rainwater harvesting or something, climate smart agriculture, you know, that is what has been getting most of the attention. These one-off fixes, as you quite rightly said. But the comprehensive thing that I'm talking about that we are promoting, you know, is more involved than that. So you don't get to see that you have climate smart agriculture just because you did one practice or two practices. It's a whole suite of practices. And for the kids, I use dental hygiene as the example. Just because you floss your teeth doesn't mean you can have proper dental hygiene. You still have to brush your teeth, you still have to scrape your tongue. There are so many other things you have to do. So an approach involves a whole suite of activities. And that is where the problem with climate smart agriculture has originated. So that until such time as we universally adopt a comprehensive climate smart agriculture, those arguments will still be valid. There are instances where it's just a technical fix. Some fool comes up with, I shouldn't say some fool, but yeah, some fool comes up with the idea, you know, let's do rainwater harvesting, you know.
Yeah.
Or let's change a solar water pump and then use the water in the same irresponsible way as before you had the solar water pump. Yeah.
Sorry to have to say this.
I
haven't had my minister nor agriculture or the minister before in the last government ever talk anything about CSA. You know, and I agree with your comprehensive approach, but you haven't had a policy statement from any government saying, listen, guys, we in this thing now. Heat wave, we need to start getting the policies are wrong, something like that. And what can we do when we go out to get money and accelerate money? We have Spencer, we have all of those guys on there. We need you guys to come and say, listen, Grenada government have 5 policies that require $50 to $60 million over the next 5 years. This is where we're targeting it. This is Grenada CSA response.
It's a program, like it's
yes.
So Steve,
where is this?
Yeah,
it's on. I mean, I could call names. It's on Eamon Francois' desk right now at the PS in Agriculture. It was on Minister, not Bowler, Minister Horsford's desk.
Yeah,
it's there. It's there. It's not some pie in the sky stuff. But it's just that the stars haven't aligned properly. I'm hoping they're going to align properly tomorrow because tomorrow I'm going to be at the OECS ministers meeting, right? And I'm again going to be putting it forward now in a more vocalized way. So it's not as if it's not ignorance. The problem is not ignorance. The problem is getting the stars to align, blue moon or not. You know what I mean? Because just because there's a blue moon doesn't mean that the stars are going to align.
The head tax example in the region, and you know we just need to. Here we have Guyana is one of the biggest food baskets in the CARICOM.
Belize as well, eh? Don't forget Belize and Suriname.
And then you have small islands in the OECS like St. Vincent who have been doing wonders in agriculture. I mean, why we can't just? I don't know if it's a mindset we have.
No, it's because it requires a systemic as opposed to a systematic response. Without trying to lecture, you know, the systematic response is where you're just plugging fingers into the holes in the dike, you know. a systematic thing. You have to stand back and be prepared to lose some water and say, look, this is how we're going to attack the whole dike.
That's right.
And unless you have that whole of government approach, I mean, and these are things these are words that are bandied about,
Steve,
but people don't realize that there are governments that are using it, and I'm lucky enough to have worked with governments that use it, so that when I see another government that's not using it, I'm just biding my time. Thinking that they have to get
Steve,
there,
an hour
they have to get
ago,
there.
before you came in, I feel the same way as I feel now, even having listened to you. I still have this fear. I worry about the future generations in terms of the kind of world they're going to inherit. I see what's taking place, the floods, the fires, the hurricanes. It looks bad.
Yes, it does.
It looks very, and it's going to get worse.
Before it gets
Before
better.
it gets better,
Yeah.
It is going to get worse before it gets better.
And
But-
nature have a
So what can
interesting
we
way of
do?
rebalancing itself.
So what can we do
No,
on
no,
an
no, no.
individual level?
I'm not agreeing with you at all.
Yeah.
You see, that is a cop-out. You see, this
Yeah.
thing about nature have
No,
a way
no,
of balancing
not from
itself.
the climate change thing.
Oh,
I'm talking about
because-
from the
be-
systems and the
because
hurricanes.
Because
and
I
so
know
on.
people who cut down mangroves and say, it will grow back. You know
No,
what I mean?
no,
No.
not from that angle.
I'm not there.
Not from that
I'm not
angle
siding
at
with you there at
all.
all.
Okay.
But in terms of a realistic approach to change management, I'm happen to be one of those people who, living cutters change management principles all my life. There has to be a sense of urgency first.
No, we
And
get
it takes more than just 2 announcements of heat waves, That's how we are. We are into brinksmanship. This entire species, our entire species, we are not programmed for slow onset events.
Yeah.
Years ago, you never heard about a drought alert. Who cares about a
Yeah.
drought alert? Fire alert. If it's immediate, if it's an
Panama
immediate
Canal.
threat.
Panama Canal is a good example.
Yeah.
Panama Canal, ships are not moving because of how low the levels of the water has dropped from the rivers coming down.
Yeah.
And we go feed it in December.
Yeah.
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 In terms
Serious.
of the kind of supplies that you expect to pass through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Steve, we got to
without
wrap up.
that-
We're out of time.
without-
What are your final comments on this
I want
matter?
to appeal to you and viewers and listeners who may be of the same mindset to see that there's reason for hope. Not only does hope spring eternal in the human chest, but there are enough things going on, and maybe it's because people like we haven't been exposing the wider population to all the things going on behind the scenes, so that there's this sense of despair. Nihilism was referred to in Antigua recently. But there is reason for hope. Blue moon or no blue moon? I'm also impressed with blue
Antigua
moon.
wants to have some international
What?
court for the thing. They're going to fight a case.
Steve, thank you very
Along
much
with
for.
Fiji,
We
along
hope
with
you'll
that
come
one.
back. We're out of time. Really
But,
appreciate
I mean,
that.
I hope
viewers-
that I changed just one iota,
Yeah.
that despondency, Look at me. I mean, I am
a
really
five-hour program for this.
really a protagonist. I'm there in the fight, and I'm telling you, don't give up.
We thank you
because
very much.
there are people out
Viewers,
there with
thank
it.
you very much for being with us this evening. Community Forum. We'll see you next week, same time. Bye-bye.